Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanny and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of 3, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
I'm not too bad, thank you.
Yes.
How are you guys?
Yes,
Good,
well,
good.
well, it's a beautiful day here in wherever I am. It's all going
The
quite
neighbourhood? Not quite.
In the hood.
well. In the hood.
Aren't you in Buenos Aires?
We are, yes. Yes, I keep going onto the balcony and saying, hello, Buenos Aires. We're in a
What's
little place
new?
called
Buenos Aires.
Buenos
I'm
Exactly.
you.
Just
You
like
want
that.
no, I'm just a little stuck on you. You be on me too.
Exactly like that. So we're in Palermo in Buenos Aires. It's very good.
Beautiful.
There
Beautiful.
must be
Yeah,
lots of
puppy.
Palermos. I hear about it.
Yeah, whenever we Google things to do in Palermo or restaurants in Palermo,
Coming up in Sicily, are
comes up
you?
with Italy a lot. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's strange. Anyway.
And I think that I'm sure there's another one as well. Because only recently, and I've thought to someone, oh, maybe it was your stuff actually. And I went, what? And then I was like, oh, I didn't know there was a Palermo there as
He's
well.
a good boy.
Look how good looking this dog is. It's freaking me out.
No, don't shoot my headset.
Look at how
Cord.
cute your puppy is.
Seriously, how good looking is this dog? Model dog.
Oh,
Look at that face, those
good.
eyes.
Yeah.
You're not very well behaved.
I'm glad Arthur's not
I
here to
feel
hear
like-
this because it does make Arthur's looking a bit rough today. He needs a grooming.
I don't think he's quite got the gist of how to podcast.
No, I don't think he has.
Yes.
I also don't think he could have been a wolf because he's too cute. Like if he went running up to something, they'd go,
It's very beautiful.
you were so cute. The rabbits would rough and tumble with him instead of run away.
All right, yes, that's my news, is that, yes, sadly Buff passed away. Buff, well,
Oh.
best known for his...
Scent?
Farting antics.
No, well, I was going to say his horrendously smelly
Eau de
farts and his disproportionately large
His-
penis.
Oh, I didn't remember that. I didn't know that bit.
Oh, it was
God,
massive.
what
Like
a horror.
it was almost longer than his legs. But yes, God rest his soul. And now we have Kipling. So Kipling will grow. He's already put on 4 kilos in 2 weeks, so he's going to grow pretty fast. But he's a cutie wootie.
He's not perimenopausal by any chance, is he? Because I seem to be having the same issues.
Me too. Yeah, I don't think so.
That's funny.
I wish it was. It really isn't.
If I'd thought of that, I would have called him Perry instead of Kipling. Get your shit together, Perry. Oh, here he comes.
Wake up to yourself, Perry.
Oh,
That would have been fun.
I cannot ever remember that
Yeah.
quote. What are we drinking? Boys, look like you're on something very moderate there.
What time
Well,
is it there?
given that it is 6 o'clock in the morning,
5 in the
or
morning or
6:30
something.
now,
It's dawn.
we're just on a literally. We're having a coffee because it's so early.
Right,
Oh,
fair
very
enough.
civilised.
Understandable. And Swanny, what about
How
you?
about you?
Well, I've been in Bali for the last week with my family, and we went 5 years ago, and on that trip my children were a bit younger, and myself and the 3 kids all got sick, and my husband was the only one who didn't, and he claimed it was because he drank scotch the entire time. So I employed a similar
Technique.
and mine was tequila, and I had a minimum of 2 margaritas every day, and it seemed to work a treat. So I'm very happy to report that none of us got sick. The kids were not on whiskey
Were they
or,
having 2
or
margaritas a day?
No, they're on a very special probiotic that someone suggested I get them, so that worked. But no, I'm just on a Diet Coke this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Well, I am drinking a Yugo Spritz.
Oh.
So Swanny sent me for my birthday a bottle of whatever it's called, Saint-Germain. Yeah.
Yep.
And so I thought, in honour of that and the fact I had a lot of mint in the fridge, I thought I'd
that's
have
good.
a Hugo Spritz.
Is it a good one?
Cheers. It's delicious.
You've got it in the right glass, that's for sure.
Yeah, you
It
nailed
is
the glass.
delicious.
We went to a French restaurant, probably about a month ago here, and I asked if they did it, and they didn't. And the lady said, oh, if you like that, you'll like this. And this thing came out, and it was so sweet. And I was like, oh, really? Like, you know how something, it's got to be right. And if it's right, it's perfect. But if you're slightly off, it's just, you know, if the first one I'd ever
Rubbish.
had been like that, I would never have even gone down that path. It was
Right.
just that the first one I had was so excellent that I was like, this is a thing. So, I think your volume in your vessel and your ice looks
It's a
perfect.
whole tray of ice, a complete tray of ice, yeah.
Well done, you. It
Now-
looks wonderful.
It's pretty good. So who are we? I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanny.
And I'm Clarky. And together we are...
Trial by
Wine.
Beautiful. And Jäger spritz and coffee. Yep.
Yes.
So who's got a story?
I do. I have
All
one.
right.
And what I need to do is I need to tell you my sources up front, but I need to save one of the sources, but it's a very important one, and I can reveal it at the end. But if I tell you what it is, it will really give the
game
whole
away.
thing. The whole thing will be given away. Okay.
Right.
So remind me to tell you that because it is an important source. It's a documentary.
Is the source Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
It's not dissimilar to that. It gives even more away than that title. That's how stupid this other title is.
Wow, more than that.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Anyway, so I was like, I can't tell you what it is. Okay, so my sources are theindependent.co.uk, vice.com, dailymail.co.uk, mirror.co.uk, Wikipedia, and then this particular documentary that I've watched. But again, I'll tell you at the end what that was because otherwise I would tell you the whole crime up front, which kind of defeats the purpose, right? But you must remind me to tell you what that is.
Graphic murder of blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like there are 3 parts to the title. They literally have covered everything off that the story is about. It's like, oh, okay, well, pretty much.
The 28 stabbing death of Mrs. Munro by her ex-husband.
Absolutely. As always, I like to start with a bit of geography. So I've been on maps and had a little look. And my story today starts in the UK. And this was a crime that was committed, I think, while both Schmitty and I lived over there. And I'm certainly aware of it. I know Caroline will be as well. But it wasn't something that I was massively invested in. And so when I saw this as a crime, I thought I actually might have a look at it because I couldn't quite remember the details of it. It just all seemed a bit sort of generic. Actually quite an interesting story. So I thought I would share it with you. So our story starts in a seaside town called Seaton Carew, which I'd never heard of before. And it's about 270 miles north from London, and it's on the coast, the northeast coast. It's a very small town, very insular, and it's described as having a sort of a decayed elegance because it sits between Teesside and Hartlepool, which I think are two sort of like industrial.
Hartlepool, isn't it?
Hartlepool, that's it. What did I call it? Hartlepool. Hartlepool. Yeah.
You've been away too long.
Oh, God. I think they're quite industrial, and this might have been at one point where people sort of took a bit of time off. So it's actually very small. It's only like a population of about 6,000 residents, but there are aspects of it that are, because it's totally, seaside fronting, and there are some sort of grand looking, sort of a little bit tired houses along the front. You can imagine like that kind of English seaside town. So don't think of, like Carnival and piers. It's not like that. It's a bit more sedate than that.
Oh.
It's pretty ordinary.
Pissweek world?
Swanny, you used a phrase, decaying elegance.
Yeah.
And it's taken me straight to, if a...
Bubbles de Vere?
If a coroner was looking at a body,
yes,
and they still look quite pretty, but a little bit decaying, that could be described as decaying elegance.
That's revolting. Okay.
Well, I think
we haven't heard that yet, but I would like you to keep an eye out for it.
Okay.
I thought it was really apt actually, because it's that thing where some things. I mean, I've been to places on the seaside in the UK, and I turn up there and I don't really get it. I just sort of think, and a lot of people love it, but I've been, where I've gone to stay in a nice, probably with you, Schmitty, now that I think about it, somewhere in a nice hotel. It looks really quite great. Is it Brighton? We went and stayed in a grand-looking hotel, but, the reality is like it's old.
Brighton you would,
I stayed in a hotel in Brighton that looked all right on the outside. But
Yes, it's quite common, right?
when we went down to Cornwall.
Well, that was much nicer down there.
Yeah, that was all right. But we had an Airbnb, it was a B&B at the time. It was quite nice. But
Before there was the air, that's correct.
we've stayed in lots of dodgy places, though.
Yeah, but, that's part of the way you get to go to where you get to go. It's not about the accommodation. It's half the time. It's just about the experience. Anyway, so we're in Seaton Carew.
Bognor Regis.
No.
At the, what's the name of the Oh, far out. What do they call those? Camp?
And they've always got like because the people do the
Jamborees.
shows. No, the people do the
Yeah,
shows.
you know
They've
exactly
got
what I'm talking about.
They all end
Butlins?
up Butlins. That's it. Butlins. Yeah, that's totally it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Not
I
that.
stayed at a Butlins in Bognor Regis. Anyway.
Oh, dear God.
For a Ciroc weekend.
Bognor Regis.
Bognor.
I was in Bognor for a Ciroc weekend. Yeah. I knew how to
really
have fun.
Oh, gosh. That's right. So I need to introduce you now to a couple. Their names are John and Anne Darwin. And to the outside world, they're a very ordinary couple. They live in Seaton Carew. They do live on the seaside. And I guess they're quite fortunate in respect that where they do live is there's a number of houses that are connected that look very grand. And it's called The Cliff. And there's, the cliff number 1. That's like the address is called The Cliff, although it's not really on a cliff. It's just on the seafront.
Is it not? Yeah.
It's not a cliff. It's just the sea. I'd say the beach. It's not the beach. The water's across the road. Yeah. Anne is a receptionist at a local doctor's, and John Darwin is a prison officer. And they have 2 grown-up sons, but they do not live with them. They have left the house and they live elsewhere. John works at a prison. Well, I know it's in Stockton. I think it was called Holmes Prison. And he was described as being quite a nice guy, a bit lazy, someone said. Nice enough, but not didn't give much of himself. And they thought that, to be honest, he seemed more comfortable with the prisoners than he was with his,
superiors
prison
or
guard colleagues.
Colleagues.
Spent a lot of time with them playing chess. I don't know that it was high security from what I can gather. It seemed like they all seemed to be doing a fair bit of interacting with each other. But the overall sort of feeling about John was that he saw working at the prison as a bit of a stopgap. He had often talked about his sort of other business interests, and he often was talking about the fact that he had other properties, sort of investment properties that he owned and that he rented out. In fact, he and Anne owned, this has been quoted a different number every time, a different source, but let's say 11 rental properties in a place called Easington Colliery. And the reason why the name's important is because it's called a pit village. And I didn't really know what that was, but I think it relates to...
It's a colliery, so
totally.
Yeah, it's a mine. Yeah.
Yep.
Coal
so
mine?
It's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not an illustrious place. It's certainly probably not as nice. It's definitely not as nice
Probably
as the
got
Cliff.
a few slag heaps.
Yep. And it's cheap. It's really cheap. So he was starting there, and his plan was sort of to build this sort of empire. And he was also quoted as saying that it was so cheap to buy that in fact he'd bought one of the properties on a credit card.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So he made it sort of known that, he had other interests and that he was a bit quite important. So maybe he had ideas above his station, but he certainly wanted people to know that. Well, in actual reality was the fact that he and Anne had got themselves into quite significant financial trouble. So although they had a number of properties, they had no tenants. This is, I should have told you that. This is 2002.
Oh, okay.
Or leading up to 2002. Yeah. Let's say early 2000s.
If he's bought a property on his credit card and not paid it off, that's a bad strategy.
Yeah, I don't know that you can do that, but he was quoted as saying that. So whether he had or not, the point being that they were acquiring
very cheap properties.
These very cheap properties, but a number of them. And then the way that they were sort of outwardly presenting themselves was that they were, starting this little property empire, and they were quite special.
I know a few people like that.
But the reality was not that. I've seen someone interviewed, I've got to remember who it was, I think it was one of the detectives who worked on the case that we'll come to, obviously, I'm giving it away there. But he said they didn't even have enough money to feed their 2 dogs. They had 2 Rottweilers who required quite a lot of food, so they were buying their food on a credit card. But at the same time, John Darwin was driving around in a Range Rover that he said had huge hire purchase, monthly payments that he needed to make. So it was very much about keeping up appearances for John and Anne Darwin. And in fact, things were getting so dire that John Darwin was quoted as saying, I thought I was worth more dead than alive. And that was the truth. So in March of 2002, on March 21st actually, John didn't turn up to his night shift after taking his canoe out to sea. His wife reported that he hadn't returned, and he was an experienced paddler, and that he knew the waters well because he was a local. So it was very unusual that he hadn't come back, and she was concerned. At the same time, at the prison, he hadn't turned up for his next shift, And again, that was very out of character for him. So the police were notified and a search effort started. 5 lifeboats, 2 Coast Guard units, 1 helicopter and a spotter plane spent the next 36 hours looking for John Darwin.
Oh, no.
Only erect canoe. Oh gosh, only erect canoe.
An erect canoe. Sorry?
Only a wrecked canoe and a paddle were found on a beach nearby.
Is that like a blow-up canoe?
The media at the time were reporting that Anne Darwin was in a terrible predicament. And that was because without a body and the fact of the location of her house at the cliff, which again was not on a cliff, just across the road, she looked directly out to the water where her husband had
like
left
Brighton.
from. Yeah, pretty much.
You know, where we...
Yeah. So that she was tormented by the fact that, you know, there was no closure, there was no body, she didn't know what to do, and how would she face her life having to be, you know, looking out the window all day, all night, seeing the water where he had gone missing. How could she possibly move on? The police liaison who worked with Anne said she wasn't overly emotional, but they'd seen lots of people react in lots of different ways when things happened. So while she was upset and she did cry a little bit, nothing particularly over the top, whereas her son, they had 2 boys.
Cigarette Sally cry. My husband's gone.
Her sons were absolutely gutted.
Well, they would be.
Yeah, they had lost their father, so they were very distraught. However, the insurance investigators who work on the behalf of the insurance companies were a little suspicious. They'd said that in recent months...
Me too.
There were 3 cases where people had gone to sea, gone missing, and then turned up later. So they were saying, look, just
in an
give
erect
us...
canoe?
Not an erect canoe.
And not just like a foot.
No. Oh, no. What's her name? Leanne? No, I forgot her name.
I can't think of it either. Yeah.
Melissa Caddick.
Melissa
Caddick.
Melissa Caddick, that's it. They also said it's very unusual for a man of... It's so funny because when I looked back at his age, like 52, I thought he looked about 62, 70 even.
Judgy.
Very judgy.
It's a hard life up there in the north, you know.
It is, apparently, yeah. I just didn't realise that I was so close to his age, and I found that quite confronting, I think. That's what it's true. I went, oh, I don't like that at all. They thought they were suspicious that he had taken up canoeing again, because apparently he used to canoe, and then he said, and the wife was saying that he was a canoer, but he'd just taken up again. And as I said, it was highly unlikely that someone would take up canoeing again on the North Sea in March. So they suggested surveillance for some time, expecting that the dead person would turn up.
Float.
But within days, the coroner released a death certificate.
That's fast.
So it was quick. Yeah.
Without a body?
I'm not without a body, and I'm not sure if that's within days of him disappearing, or within days of the insurer saying that they wanted to investigate, because they were saying they were started an investigation, but it only just got off the ground. They were only just starting to entertain that when it was like, oh no, here's your death certificate. And they're like, oh, from the coroner's office.
So the coroner's got a very different view of this, going, there's nothing suspicious about this. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas the insurance company's going, this is too much.
Yeah.
Coroner's like 52-year-old man in the North Sea.
Yeah.
He's had a heart attack, you know.
Yeah.
It's just,
again.
You know, we don't have a lot of cyclists up there. You know, we don't have the lycra mammals. Instead, we've got these guys in wetsuits out in the North Sea. Drops off every week. Don't worry about it.
Oh, actually, I can tell you what that was.
Feeding their canoes Viagra.
Exactly.
That's right.
So on April 10, 2003, John Darwin was declared dead.
Wow.
And shortly after that, Anne claimed £162,000 in life insurance policies. Now, again, depending on where I look, I see the figure 250,000. The figure does change. So in Wikipedia, it's quoted as 250,000. The point being pounds, but it does say pounds in Wikipedia as well, saying that she got £250,000. Okay. But everywhere else that I've seen on the document, it says 162. So let's just stick to the lower amounts, you know, and
somewhere between 162 and 250,000 pounds.
A lot of money for these people. Yeah, somewhere in that vicinity. That's probably when you've got all these different sources, right? Yeah. And who knows what's right. Also, around this time, the local police liaison officer, who was the person who had been dealing with Anne Darwin, had a call from an old school friend, like primary school friend, who now worked at the prison. And he said that he was convinced that he'd seen John Darwin because he was in a car and he saw John walking sort of past him. And he said, I would recognise the gait of that man's walk. He has a very particular gait. That was definitely him.
Right.
That's what a paddler looks like. It's all those years of paddling.
Oh, the paddling.
Seeing old wobbly walk.
And he's convinced of the gate. Anyway, so the police officer, liaison officer, makes a note of it and then it's never followed up. And then
That old chestnut.
another prison colleague who'd worked with John Darwin claims that he saw John Darwin drive past in his Range Rover with the dogs in the car.
They're just seeing ghosts.
But that is
What?
is
this?
How many people do you reckon drive a Range Rover in
with two
Canoe?
Rottweilers? Yeah.
Right. So, but nothing came of it. So again, that was really nice. Then everything just goes cold, and it's not until the 1st of December 2007.
Wow, 4 years later.
No, nearly 5.
Wow.
2002, 2007.
Hiding.
Yeah.
In plain sight, in his Range Rover with his dogs down the high street.
Yep. John Darwin walks into the West End Central Police Station in London and he hands himself in, saying he has amnesia and he doesn't know who he is and he has no recollection of really anything. He appears to be in good health. He's quite tanned. Now, remember, this is December in London, so not many people are sporting a tan.
He's been somewhere else, yeah.
He's dressed quite nicely, and when he sees the first, the young police officer on the front desk, they think he's a bit of a loon or whatever else. Anyway, he goes and speaks to someone more senior, and the more senior police officer comes out and says to him, can we help you, mate? Because he looks like he's dressed pretty nice, not sleeping rough or anything like that. He's had a haircut, like doesn't look like he's been in any trouble or anything.
Oh, he looks fine.
Anyway, so he's not really prepared to move
from
on.
Marbella or somewhere,
Can I help you? What would you like to do?
Can you tell us that other source yet?
What's the place the Benidorm? He's been in Benidorm.
Oh, God. Anyway, he says he has no recollection, nothing at all for, conveniently the last 5 years. I asked a few other questions. Any idea who you are? No, I don't know who I am or what's happened. I've got no memory. I've got amnesia. And then finally they push him a bit more and he says, maybe my name's John. He's like, okay. Anything
and maybe
more?
My last name is...
And when really pushed, he goes, maybe my last name is...
Oh, my God.
I'm getting John Darwin.
Are you serious?
But I'm not sure if it's me or it's spirits talking to me.
But I don't know because
From
I don't remember
beyond
anything.
the
I've got
veil.
amnesia. I don't know. I've got amnesia. One of the things I really liked at this point was I read this in a source and it was said they were asking him a number of questions at this point, trying to work out what he knew, what he didn't know. And initial questioning suggested John was unlikely to help because when asked what 9/11 signified, he responded 20. For 7/7, which you may not know in some sense, that was the bombing in
the bus and the trains, yeah.
In London.
In London.
He said 14.
Yeah.
So he was being just a dick. A medical examination recorded his symptoms.
Do you know your address? I'm getting vibes of cliffs.
Yes. A medical examination recorded his symptoms as entirely failing to match those of an amnesia sufferer. So they look I can imagine at the same time they start looking online and the moment they start looking into John Darwin, red flags there because there's actually an invasive...
I can just imagine them all at work.
Yeah.
Just going, look at this clown.
Look at this guy. And then, of course, when they start looking at
And no one
his
was
name
even
online,
looking for him.
well, yes. So when they put his name into the system,
The insurance.
there were some red flags that started to come up, but more so from fairly recent times. I think an investigation had been open maybe 3 months before that, where a couple of different people had started to call various departments, whatever, saying, I've heard this, I've seen that, yeah, I've heard a phone call.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense than just being off having a nice time and then coming in
Yes.
and going, I might be maybe John Darwin.
But of course, they didn't tell him that. They've just gone, oh my God, you went missing 5 years ago.
That sounds
your poor
awful.
wife. Let's call your wife.
Oh, yes.
Let's get in touch with your wife. But where was Anne? Was Anne at
on the
number 4,
Costa
the
del
cliff?
Sol.
Not quite.
Marbella. Or where did I say Benidorm?
Not quite.
Where was
So
she?
it turns out to be the biggest news story one of the biggest news stories of 2007. And it's all about, coming back from the dead. And there were so many questions that people had in that, first sort of 24 hours. And the first question was, and certainly for the tabloids, was, where is she? Where is the wife? Where is Anne Darwin? We need to speak to Anne. Did Anne, her husband's
remarried?
back. So They're
I'd take that
unable
as a no.
She's not remarried. So the first place that they go to, of course, is number 4, the cliff, their house.
Yeah.
But
There she is.
not when they get there, the police do arrive and there's a nice
Smart.
new owner there because the house had been sold 6 weeks before John Darwin had reappeared. Anne had sold the house they shared on the seafront at Seaton Carew.
Coinky dink.
Yes. And I've seen an interview with the man there. And he comes out, a young father or whatever else, and he said, she was lovely to deal with. She was a nice lady, and we didn't know anything really about her, but we could tell that, a lady had lived here, and there was there was a Spanish language book was left, and that was it. So we figured she'd, off to start a nice life in retirement in Spain.
So I wasn't far off then.
You weren't far off.
Oh, you were all
You're not
over
right,
that,
but you weren't
yeah.
far off. The day after his reappearance, a tabloid
Argentina?
paper...
South America.
Closer. The day after his reappearance...
Mexico.
Closer. You're not going to get it.
New Mexico.
No. The day after his reappearance, a tabloid paper received a tip-off that Anne Darwin was in Panama City.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So they
Jeepers.
contacted a British foreign correspondent based in Miami, and he set off to Panama to see if he could find Anne Darwin. The gentleman's name, the foreign correspondent, is David
I'm
Lee.
sure you're going to tell us this, but it's very odd that he didn't just go to Panama City and live out his life with her. Are they fighting or something?
We'll get there. That's very odd. You're right. There's 5 years we've got to work out what happened in, and this is just this is just the back end,
It's
right?
very
So at the moment you're
now.
like, why has this guy turned up after all this time? If he was, everyone thought he was dead. Anyway, so David Lee is the foreign correspondent, the journalist, who gets the tip. Well, from the tabloid, and he arrives in Panama City, assuming that she will have already left, because if she's just found out that her husband, who was, assumed dead, is alive, she must be absolutely ecstatic and on the first plane out there to go and be reunited with, her husband who's been missing for 5 years. He turns up at this
So that's
apartment.
the angle that the media's taking at the time?
At the time, they think that, they don't
She'll
know
be
what's
happy.
going on.
Yeah.
That she'll be happy. So he arrives at her flat, and he's banging
Panama.
the door, whatever else, in Panama City.
Right.
Yep. Assuming that she's flown back.
And
But
she
when he
goes,
gets
"Oh,
there,
no, not
he
you
can
again."
tell that there's someone there, but she
Just the
won't,
reporter
she
of it.
won't let him in, whatever else. So he just stays there. He seems like a really nice man, actually. Although I don't know that anyone who's associated with tabloid paper would be, but he comes across quite nice. So having assumed she's flown back to the UK, he arrives and can tell that she's there, but she won't let him in. So he says he waits about 40 minutes. And she finally says,
I'm not home.
Go away.
all right, you better come in. So she lets him in, and he says,
He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
and he says, they're trying to find you. You know that your husband's alive, right? You've been told. And she said, oh, yeah, I know. I'm on my way. I'm just having a bit of a visa issue. And he was like, yeah, I don't think that you've got
For
a visa
your
issue.
UK passport.
Well,
That's not a
you'd be
thing.
fine. Your husband's just come in after having
To go home.
amnesia and being missing for 5 years. You thought he was dead. This must be incredible. And he said, she just seemed, I've got to sort this out kind of
Whatever.
thing. So to try and gain her trust, he sat with her and he said, I didn't say, why are you not flying out? He said, I sort of finally went down a line of questioning and sort of suggested, people are saying maybe John faked his death. And she said, she flew into a sort of a bit of a rage and she's like, I'm devastated and I've been heartbroken. And since day one of him, gone missing, my life has been, I'm being tormented. Back in the UK, 24 hours later, an armchair detective from Cheshire calls the tabloid.
Don't fuck with cats.
I don't know which tabloid it is. Doesn't matter.
Or the Daily Mail, surely. News of the
And-
world.
I don't know. Actually, I don't know what it is. Were they even
Well,
around?
it'd be
then?
good if it was News of the World. Yeah.
And she
It
says,
would.
I have a photo. I have a photo of John and Anne Darwin in Panama that proves that she knew he was alive. And you know what this lady from Cheshire had done? All she'd done was she'd Googled the names John and Anne and Panama. And bingo, a photo of the couple.
They came up on the internet.
Yep. a photo of them came up with an estate agent in Panama City with a date stamp even. So it's been a photograph that's then been scanned and then put onto a website. And it was through a real estate business because they were out there looking for property. So here are this wonderful English couple.
Brilliant.
Posing with the real estate agent who's showing them around apartments. And the business that they were photographed with was trying to entice people, saying, come here, we'll look after the local legalities, we'll help you set up your offshore companies, all that kind of thing. That's why people go to Panama City, right? That's one of the beauty, Panama Papers. It's not a coincidence. So they were promoting their product and saying, look at this happy couple. They didn't know that they were not who they said they were. So from that photo, and because of the date stamp on it, 2006, so it's at least, we know that it's 18 months before the beginning of, I think it must have been June or something. It's December 2007 when he comes forward and says, I don't remember anything. And she's saying, I've never heard, I don't know where he is. And when you see the journalist from the tabloid being interviewed, I love this. They say it's called a ring-in. So if someone calls in with information about it, because they said we're always after them. Some of them are just horrendous, but they were like, this is an extraordinary one, and it's known as like one of the best that ever happened, because it wasn't a journalist that found it. It was just some armchair detective going, I'm suspicious.
Just some random.
I don't believe this, and because this, now people do this all the time, right? But this is quite early days, right? Okay, so at this very moment, David Lee, who's the foreign correspondent from Miami down in Panama City, back on day 2, she's still there, interviewing Anne. He says he's sitting with her as he takes the call, and they say, you are not going to believe this. We're going to send you a photo that's going to prove that she does know where John Darwin's been. We're going to send the photo through. So he gets the photo sent to him, and he turns the computer around to show her. He says she goes white, and then she just goes, well, I guess that's stuff done kind of thing. Yeah, I guess that shows you everything.
Who is that?
Yeah. She doesn't argue it. So he then says to her, right, were you in it from the start? And she says, absolutely not. No. I thought he was dead. It wasn't until a year after he went missing that he turned up on my front door hoping that I'd got the insurance money. At this time,
story.
This is one of my favourite things. This is so UK. The pair of you will know it, like anyone knows it these days. But, we all know what it's like when you're in the UK, and it's just what's the headline today, but how clever can it be?
Oh, the pun.
The pun. So they had the photograph on the front page of all the newspapers, and one of them, the headline read, "Canoes that in Panama."
I knew it was going to start with canoe.
And John Darwin is circled, "Canoes that in Panama."
I knew it was going to start with canoe. I was just really trying to rack my brain for a canoe pun. That's brilliant. That's definitely the sun.
She gets a bit panicked, and she's like, my boys are never going to talk to me again. You think so? I mean, what a terrible thing to have done to your grown-up sons. It's just unforgivable.
The sons, yeah.
Yeah. Well, your dad said, no, dad's are dead. No, mum and dad have been having the wild old time.
Time of their lives.
So at this time, John Darwin is arrested, and Anne Darwin returns to the UK to be taken into custody. The sons at this point release a statement saying that they can't believe, first of all, they're delighted that their dad's been found. So, he's come forward and whatever else. They're like, oh, my God.
And the good thing is they're going to know where he is next time because he's going to be in jail.
Correct. So the sons release a statement saying they can't believe that their mum let them believe that their dad was dead. So they were really angry with her. And at that point, they said they didn't want to have anything to do with either of them. Right. So, again, that's December of 2007. So detectives start to look at the cliff, the little bit where they lived. And it's not all that tricky. Once they get there, obviously the house has been sold, which I told you, but there was a treasure trove of correspondence. And a lot of it was about a new identity. And the new identity was John Jones. And this is where another crime is committed, because what he did was he took a lead from the novel The Day of the Jackal, and I think it's happened in some other crimes that we've done as well, where he has gone, after he's gone missing, one of the first things he did was he went to a local library and got a library card, and then he started doing research there. That was before he got the card, actually. And he found that there was a baby who died in nearby Sunderland. And it was within 2 years of when he was born.
His own birth year.
Yeah, he used that identity to, then he gets like a library card. It's little things to start with. And then he befriends a librarian, and she's the person who then helps him when he needs, what's a person called?
Like a notarized.
Yeah, that's how he gets his new identity, is by becoming John Jones, and he uses his relationship with someone at the library to start that whole new identity, and all the time still being able to use.
So he actually gets a passport.
Oh yeah, totally. That's how he's able to move around. So this is like the early stages. So what he tells the police is that, yeah, he did go out to sea, and then he'd arranged. I love this. He arranged for Anne to pick him up. So Anne had to like drive.
So
Yeah.
the stories don't
And
even
literally,
match.
like,
It's
he
so good.
leaves, I forgot what it's called.
The cliff.
Yeah, Sefton, Seton, Carew. He goes
had 5 years
out
or
off the
something
water
to
and he
work
goes
on this
around the
story.
corner. I think she sticks with it for a little while. She sticks with it for a short while. And then when he gets around like the corner, like he's gone out, some waterway.
around the head kind
and
of
then
thing.
she's just waiting in the car. He crawls up the rocks or whatever else, pushes the canoe back out. And then she drives him to Durham, drops him off at a train
God's
station.
sakes.
He then catches a train to Newcastle.
And no CC.
No one was looking for him, right? But this is what's, with all these other things, you can't do booths.
So much CCTV
there
in
must
the
have
UK,
been.
yeah.
So she drops him off. So she drives him to the train station in Durham. He gets on a train from Durham to Newcastle. Then he gets another train from Newcastle to Carlisle. And then he kind of thinks, oh, God, I actually don't have a lot of money. So I'm not going to be able to continue to stay in hotels. So he then uses the money that he has to buy some camping equipment. And he just starts camping. But as one of the detectives said, I think he kind of got sick of that. So after a couple of weeks, he just called her and said, can you come pick me up? So she drove.
Went home.
She drove from Seton across to somewhere near Carlisle, picked him up in the car, their car, drove him home. So now it gets interesting. Yeah, it's crazy, right? When I say now it gets interesting, it's just as interesting.
I can't believe it because
it's just ridiculous, right?
if you were going to do it, you would surely have a plan. Like, you need to be missing for a month, so you go and do this or whatever. Not just, it's just so
I know, but they got away with it, right?
Just drop you off at the train station.
I don't understand why no one was saying anything.
It's nuts.
Exactly. So they owned number 3, I think was the Cliff, which I've told you about. But I was not aware they also owned number 4, the Cliff. Now, I don't know if they owned that at the exact moment, but they certainly owned it fairly shortly after. Because what they did was John Darwin had one of the little bed sits, correct. And because I haven't explained this, but the houses were all connected. Is that duplex when they're all connected?
Yeah.
Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Or strata title kind of.
Like imagine like
Terraced
yeah, like
houses.
they're all.
Yeah.
I think
like my house
yes.
in the UK.
So they're all connected. So what they simply did was they in the bedsit where he was, it was connected to the adjoining wall to their family home.
Oh,
they created like a little secret doorway in a cupboard.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Well,
go
see,
into the
I could
cupboard.
have done that with Nick and Helen's
Yes,
place.
exactly.
The same. Yeah.
I bet you thought about it too at different points.
No, Josh is in the next room.
Oh no,
that'd be weird.
As opposed to just walking out the backyard. Exactly.
Yeah, true.
So he was able to freely go from one house to the next. I've seen him interviewed. The arrogance of this man is like off the charts. And he was saying, we were lucky. She says actually in one interview, we were lucky that we had a gravel driveway. So if anyone drove up, we could hear them. And he would just go, and he says,
crunch,
I would just take my cup of coffee and go upstairs. Like not bothered. No one knew.
Well, they're not going to storm the door,
if we had,
are they?
If we had visitors, if she had family in, but you'd think there'd be some indication that there's someone else there, like a coffee mark or a mug or something. You would have thought there'd be something.
Yeah, but if no one's looking for it.
That's exactly right. And so many people, and a lot of the investigators obviously say, "Oh, hindsight's a wonderful thing." People say, why didn't I go and check? And all the detectives going, "Oh, it's like Narnia, the cupboard, go and check the wardrobe to see if there's a secret doorway."
Mr. Tumnus!
Yes.
Mr. Tumnus! It's ridiculous.
So they also talk about, this is the pair of them talking about but actually it's John Darwin that I've seen interviewed. He would go out for walks. He'd go along the seaside, and they had like a code, and it was a curtain
people
code.
kept seeing him.
Yeah,
and everyone's like, "No, you're crazy. We'll just ignore you."
At one point, I've seen him interviewed. He says, I saw my father and my son. My father and my brother walking towards me, and I freaked out a bit, but they didn't notice me, so I was fine." And so they had a little curtain code. So if the curtains were hanging down straight, it meant that he wasn't to
walk,
come back.
and they didn't even notice him.
Yep.
Yeah. Why is this not a movie?
It's probably, I think it is now. That's the whole point.
I think there actually is a telly.
I think there is. I think ITV, I know they have. I just
because you've got your other source.
That's not it, actually, but I think there is a made-for-telly movie.
Something.
Yeah,
I think it might be on Acorn. Yeah.
What's Acorn?
It's a streaming service, Acorn or BritBox. I'm pretty sure.
Will be.
If you say it's ITV, it'll be on BritBox. Yeah.
So that leave the curtains hanging. You can't come home. There's someone here. If it's a certain way, something else done, drawn, or whatever else, means you can come back.
Like Diary of Anne Frank style.
Kind of. Yes.
Ridiculous.
But this is it was just crazy.
He wasn't even hiding in a secret place. It was just next door or upstairs.
And there is one of the, and he had a different name that he went by. I wonder if I can find the other name. He had another name that was like Kurt or something. I can't really, maybe that wasn't Kurt. I'm probably making that up.
Was it Don Jarwin? hey, are you John Darwin? No, I'm Don Jarwin.
Because
how long did he stay at the cliff for?
Well, quite some time, but he was travelling a lot, and I'll come on to that.
Okay, right.
He had to fill his day somehow.
Right.
Oh, I'm going to have to find out where it is. So with his new identity, so although he was John Jones in his passport, to the other people in the building, he had like another identity.
Jarwin.
He's still John. He's not even...
No, he did have another name.
No, maybe it's easier, like, because then, when people say John, you're not going to give yourself away if you saying that you're now Benjamin, right?
Around.
Yeah, so if you just say, well,
but this is how
John's
the whole plan is.
But John's a common first name, so John's probably safe enough. Yeah.
So here we go.
This is how little he's trying to hide.
And so many people have seen him.
7 o'clock in the morning. I can't believe this shit.
So many different people. It says here in Wikipedia, a tenant of the block of bedsit flats at the Darwin's own, Lee Wadrop, recognised Darwin and asked him, "Aren't you supposed to be dead?" To which Darwin replied, "Don't tell anyone about this." That was it. You didn't threaten him. You just said, "Don't tell anyone about this." Wadrop later said that remember they own it, so they would have been his landlord. So Wadrop said that he had not told the police because he didn't want to get involved. In May 2005, an angler, Matt Orty, claimed to have met Darwin.
He didn't want to get involved.
Who was going under the name John Williams at a lake near Penzance, Cornwall.
Yeah, he wrote a few songs too.
Not only this, he also starts to do a bit of travel because he's got money. She's got the money from the insurance company, obviously, and they're just living this nice little life. So he met a woman online at one point, and he actually went to Kansas to visit her. He thought there was going to be something sexual, but it also was of a business interest. It didn't go quite so well. So he came back.
And Anne was okay with this?
Yep.
I'm going off to shag a bird from Kansas. No problem. Off you go.
Yeah, it was just weird stuff going on. He spent most of his time on the internet where he encountered a woman from Kansas in the US whom he flew out to meet. But that didn't go so well. By November, Darwin was back in the UK and flew from Newcastle to Gibraltar. And then he travelled to... He travelled to El Porto de San Maria to view a £45,000, 42-foot catamaran that he was considering buying. He was just out and about. They went on holidays. Apparently, they would travel from different airports and then just meet somewhere. So John Jones would fly out of, I don't know, Bristol. She'd fly out of Manchester and they'd meet up in Spain. I think they went there a few times. But they were not at home. They were out. They were busy. He just didn't think anyone was as clever as he was. And he was looking for a bigger life. So they were always going on holidays.
Did they clear their debt?
I think they did clear some of it because I have read somewhere that they did pay something off. But they just were looking for the next part of their life. Where are we going to go? What are we doing? They were doing their research, trying different places. And that's when they started to look at Panama. And when interviewed, they said to him, why did you want to go to Panama? He's like, the temperatures. A lot of people don't like warm weather, but I really do. And
it's a good place for Nazi criminals to go to.
There's lots of places over there that they like to go to. And there's also, they had decided they were going to start an eco-resort. And when people were interviewed about the Darwins, they're like, these were like the most pasty, nobody not interested in the environment. He wasn't even a canoeist. That was not even true, really. He had one, but he wasn't really doing much. They were like, this is so out of what we think that they would want to do. But apparently when they went to Panama with some of their monies, they'd bought some piece of land or something and with the desire to create an eco-resort in the jungle because they were certainly flying off to Costa Rica and doing bits and pieces here and there. They were just doing whatever they like. She was living the high life. And that's when I think people started to become suspicious of Anne. No, people didn't like the fact that all of a sudden, I think I'll leave the doctor's surgery and I might just go to Panama. You know what I mean? People were not liking how much she was travelling, how happy she seemed to be. Correct.
And drank cups of tea and looked sad.
Yeah, but she couldn't do that.
They would have gotten away with it. Yeah.
She just couldn't do that. And I think, one of the parts of the investigation, there was I think one of the other people at the doctor's surgery, she said, she keeps having whispering phone calls. I'm sure she's talking to John. So that had been reported to the police.
Darling,
Seriously?
And that was where things started to take hold.
It's Don. I'm talking to Don Jarwin.
My new lover.
Oh, God. But she was started to, she was putting large sums of money, moving them around. She travelled so much. So they did start finally, a police financial investigation had begun. As I said, it was only like 3 months before he turned himself in. But I guess the point is why? Why did he turn himself in? Because they didn't know they were being investigated. They thought they were away from it. But he thought they were too smart. After 5 years, they were doing pretty well, right? But, he's known as Canoe Man by this point in the UK, of course. The reason was
Canoe Man.
Things had changed.
What an ignominious name.
Between Panama and the UK. And the visa situation had changed in the months. Once he got Anne to Panama, or as she said once he got there, I think she was complicit in all of it really, but once she was there, they'd sold everything. It just so happened that he went, oh, by the way, I'm going to have a problem because with the new laws, my passport and the visa situation is not going to be robust enough to pass the test for the UK. I'm going to get caught out. This is not going to work for us anymore. I need to come clean. So he left Panama and then thought, we're all set up now. We'll sort it all out. This will all just go away. I'll just go and say it. He thought that he was going to get away with that. So he voluntarily flew back to the UK and handed himself in because he didn't think that John Jones was going to hold up.
To be fair, he'd gotten away with it for 5 years.
Correct.
Like, how?
But what I don't understand is what was this visa situation? What, he wouldn't be able to go back to the UK? Who cares?
Following a change in Panama's visa laws.
That's the bit I don't get.
Darwin emailed Anne on the 14th of June 2007 to notify her that their identities would have to be verified by the UK police in order for them to receive now required Panamanian investors' visas.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
they
it's probably
stay
also
in Panama.
Yes, it was all based on that. So he knew that the John Jones alias would not pass up exactly that level of scrutiny.
Brazil.
So he thought that he'd just return to UK under his real name.
Or just rent.
So he comes back as, John Darwin and says, oh, I don't know what's going on. I mean, that was a little bit naive, wasn't it, John?
I've got amnesia.
They're back in the UK. It's end of 2007. She comes back and she says, I had no idea. But by July 2008, when they go to trial, she's totally changed.
No idea.
She's totally changed her tune. And she's now saying it was marital coercion and that she only did it because he made her do it. She was apparently torn to shreds in the trial.
Torn to shreds
in the trial.
Right. I thought we were taking a real turn.
Why didn't you turn to your sons? Why didn't you get help from them? Why didn't you say to them,
stop victim blaming?
Yeah. And so then she becomes
coercive control.
A real the press just absolutely crucify her, and all the headlines are mother of all lies. That's what they called her. Because she had ripped off the insurance.
Yes.
And how could you do that to your sons for so long? So there was no sympathy for what she had done. They were both convicted of fraud, and John was also convicted of acquiring the fake passport. So for his troubles, he was sentenced to 6 years and 3 months. And Anne, described as a compulsive liar by everybody who she came across, she was actually sentenced to 6 years and 6 months. So she got more because of accepting the insurance fraud money. They were both released.
Hang on, but so she accepted the money. Did they not both
knowing
get the money?
He wasn't dead.
Knowing that he wasn't dead.
No, because he's dead.
He's dead, yeah.
So she's passed the money on.
But he's not.
No, yeah, exactly.
No, so
she
he's
will
fraud.
all that moving the money around business. She's giving him money, but she
accepted it. She knew it.
Knowingly he was alive.
Yeah.
She picked him up
right?
from Nicola after he didn't like camping for a bit. And, she took the money and that was complete fraud, yeah.
They were both released in 2011, so they served about half their sentence, I think. And just before they were released, she filed for divorce.
There it is.
He was released in 2011 after serving half his sentence and wanted to rekindle his marriage. But when Anne refused, he divorced her on the grounds of unreasonable behaviour. 2 years after being released.
You're unreasonable because you won't get back with me, even though I've caused caused the been in jail for 6 years and 3 months. I mean, what?
It's crazy. 2 years after being released, John broke the terms of his parole to see a young Ukrainian woman he had met on a foreign brides website for women seeking a rich husband.
He's a horn dog.
He's horrible. He told her that hundreds of women wanted to meet him and that he received 240 messages from admirers in one day. But after that first date, she never wanted to see him again.
Truth stretcher.
In 2015, John married Filipina bride Mercedita, otherwise known as Mercy, who is 23 years his junior and has businesses including a clothes store in a giant indoor market in Manila. Okay.
Poor Mercy.
It's
like 90 days, the single life.
So he's still with Mercy in Manila. And what happened to Anne? After she did her time, she was able to work for the RSPCA using some qualifications that she had gained in prison. And then she wrote a book where all the proceeds went to both the RSPCA and the RNLI, which I believe that's the lifesaver, but I've forgotten what it's, Royal
National Lifeboat Institution.
That's it, yeah, that'll be it. So that's to do with all the silliness that they created up front.
Mm-hmm. All the wasting of time when someone else was drowning probably somewhere. Yeah.
So she's retired and lives alone north of England, but she has reconciled with her two sons, Mark and Anthony, who had previously disowned her, and she is part of her grandchildren's life. Meanwhile, John's in Manila with Mercy running a market stall.
I'm begging you for mercy.
So
why won't
that
you release
is
me?
the story of...
I'm begging you for mercy.
Oh, God, John and Anne Darwin. And I want to get straight to my sentence because I know straight up what I want to do to this man because I very rarely have this, but you have to watch a little bit of him being interviewed. He is, I believe, because I might be wrong, but I think he's a narcissist in this. He just thinks he's, I don't know, untouchable. There's something so strange about how superior he comes across. And he talks about how he thought the insurance money was his anyway. Like, well, I'm entitled to it. It'll sort our problems out. So I just have to find a way to get it. We'll do that. And then we can sort that out because we had no life. We were so stressed. We were worried about it. So I just had to solve it. And that's how I did it. So I think for me, I think that what I would like to do, the things that really bugged me about him was like, clearly he was manipulative. He suggested that he was a self-made man. I've read somewhere that he was not a self-made man. He'd been given money, his first house, his first car, all that kind of stuff had been, help. He'd had help from his family. But this idea that he thinks he's smarter than everybody else, but he's got to maintain this, idea that, I drive a Range Rover and, I've got all these properties, even if it turns out they weren't all that and they weren't being rented out by anybody at the time. It was all a bit fictitious in the sense that it was all about appearing a certain way. So what I would like to do to him is I'd like for him to have a severe public humiliation that at the point where they were making the decision that, I think we better fake our own death, I would like his kids to catch wind of the fact that was what they were going to get wind of the fact they were going to do that so that they could see their parents for what they were at that point and that they could disown them knowing that their parents were then going to say, we just won't be able to tell the kids. They got wind of that. So the kids at that point could go, oh, my God, you are those people. No, thank you. We don't want anything to do with you.
Mm.
Then I would love for him, for his colleagues at the prison who he thought he was better than, and he was kind of just sort of tolerated them, I guess, when in actual fact, because he just thought he was so much better than them. But he was still there, right? Didn't have to be there if you weren't. If you're all that, you wouldn't have needed to be doing that job.
It wasn't all that. Yeah.
That they find out that, in fact, this portfolio of properties that he purports to have and, he's making all this money of, that they see the numbers. They can see it's actually a house of cards. It's all fallen down. They're in debt. They can't even afford to pay for their dog food for their dogs. For somebody like him who's so intent on trying to find a way that it's all about the money and we can keep doing this, because she says, I said to him we need to declare bankruptcy, and he just couldn't do that. He couldn't handle that. It'd just be too embarrassing for him. Well, I want him to not have that choice, but it all be open and everybody see him for what he is, because I think that would absolutely destroy a man who's pretending to be something that he's not. And everyone goes, oh, mate, you need this job at the prison more than we do. You're not all this. This is all just fake. Out of your house. These are your debts. You're declared bankrupt, because that would have that's where he'd belong to be. And I would have loved Anne at that point to go, oh, you know what? I'm out. This is all, you're nobody. And I'm not saying that she's not part of it, but if she was the one saying that they should have declared bankruptcy, if she really did say that, well, at least that was the right thing to have done given this situation. And that's my view on the Darwins, or Canoe Man. And the title of that documentary was...
Oh, yes.
The Thief, His Wife and the Canoe. The Thief, His Wife and the Canoe. I don't know when they brainstormed that and thought, yeah.
There's a famous film called is it The Cook, the Thief, his wife and the lover or something?
Yeah. I know it's based on.
And his lover or something.
Yeah. I think that might be a play
I know,
on that.
I think it is too, but I just couldn't tell you
With
that
Helen
earlier.
Mirren, yeah.
But yeah. Right, so over to you, Pam. What did you make of it?
I think while you were giving your sentence, because I really hadn't given any thought to sentencing, I was just too much enjoying Clarkie's reaction to the twists and turns of pure stupidity that we were hearing. But as you were talking, I actually got a little bolt of inspiration.
Yeah.
Sort of along similar lines to you, but I think what we'll do, Swanny, is we will make them bankrupt.
Yep.
They will lose all of their assets, so they no longer have a house, but we'll leave them with their two-man tent. And they have to camp in the village green of the town that they're from.
Yep.
And everyone knows they're shit broke. Everyone knows who they are. And they are stuck living literally on the village green in their tent all the time. And then that's the public disgrace for that. There you go.
I like
That's my
that.
sentence.
It would be nice if someone recognised them for...
Oh, everyone knows who they are.
For once,
yeah.
it'd be nice if people went, that's them.
Big sign up saying, John and Anne
That's
Darwin.
Darwin.
Throw tomatoes if you like.
Broke.
Yeah.
I reckon I want them to throw food scraps if that's the punishment. Here you go.
Well, maybe
have half an apple.
Maybe we'll put them in the stocks for a few hours on the weekend so the kids can come and throw rotten food at them too. Yeah. Old school. So the village green, it feels like the right kind of medieval punishment.
Medieval.
Yeah. Clarkie?
God. I am so confused by this story. I don't know.
Sorry.
Like, I go through moments where I go, I don't know what the crime is. Is it just incredible stupidity? I love that he thinks he's smarter than everyone else when he's just done. Like, that was never going to work. The toing and froing.
The fact that it lasted that long, though,
if they'd have got
I
the
find
insurance
astounding.
money and gone and not come back. Yeah, but if they just left the UK
She could have, though.
and went somewhere else,
Instead of
no one
travelling,
would have.
that's right. Instead of
no one would have
travelling
worried.
around, she could have literally sold up everything, said, I'm too sad to stay here. I've paid off my debts and I've moved to
That's what I reckon.
X. There was no need.
Don't sit there talking to Don Jarwin from the receptionist.
He's like flashing
job.
it.
Like,
Look here. We're
the whole
dodgy.
thing
It's
is
just stupid.
nonsense.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I just don't get it. And also, if you were going to go and fake your own death, you would have a plan. It's literally like they've woken up and gone, go for a canoe and then I'll pick you up and drop you off somewhere.
That was their plan,
and maybe
darling.
we'll see you later.
I'll pick you up on the dig.
It's such nonsense.
Oh, I know.
So
I'm going
there's
on
a
the
couple
lamb
of
with
things
me
I
tent.
think that exactly in the UK where people will recognise me. I'm going to walk on the beach out the front of our house.
Oh, I know. But
and
they got away with it
wonder
for
why
so
people
long.
see me. Like,
If you're going to do a runner and you're going to live in a tent, go down south. Don't go north. Carlisle's near the
Yeah.
border
But
of Scotland.
he didn't want Anne to have to drive too far to come and collect him.
Well,
Fair's
that's
fair,
that- Oh, isn't he a kind
Oh, love,
man?
can you come pick me up now? But, another thing was on the day that he went
Freaks me
missing,
nuts off.
apparently it had been a particularly, unusually calm day. He went out anyway. It was a bit rough. It was super calm. And they were baffled. They kept going, oh, it's such a calm day. It's going to be one of the best days you've had.
He didn't want to actually accidentally drown.
Yeah, no, not at all.
So it's a perfect day for me to fake my death.
Yeah. So I also don't understand things like the coroner who did a death certificate for him so quickly. Like, I have this expectation that there are rules and processes in place that stop this from happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that with no plan, they literally just went, let's go and fake his death and we'll get the money. And it worked.
Yeah. It actually shows people how easy it is because once he was considered missing, from that point on, and both the coroner and the initial investigative, I don't know if he'd be a police officer or a detective, I'm not sure what you'd call him. I've seen, TV interviews with both of them, and they're both like totally, poor woman, this is awful, this is what's happened to his poor husband. They must look at that stuff now and just go, oh, God, how embarrassing.
Maybe because they were such ordinary people. As the coroner and that didn't really think that such ordinary people would do that. Yeah.
But also, if the insurance company is saying this is the third time it's happened, the coroner shouldn't be going, exactly, therefore I'm going to give him a death certificate, because there's no proof of death. There's nothing that would suggest.
But I don't think that there's any line
other than the fact that he's gone missing.
I don't think there's any connection between the insurance. What did I call the person? Investigator or whatever, the insurance who works on on behalf, and then with the coroner's office, there would be no connection. So although their suspicion was there's been three this would be the fourth, you're totally right, but I don't think that they're going, just to give you a heads up. I know they're not there. I don't think that that would happen.
But I guess what I'm saying is if you're a coroner and someone comes in and says, my husband's gone missing, I need a death certificate, would you just go, oh, sure, no problem, like
I don't think she would do that.
Here's 2 weeks of antibiotics to cure you. But how would a coroner sign a death certificate for someone who there's nothing to suggest that he's dead? So my sentence is, I just want them to fucking clean up their mess. So if you've got 11 houses in some place, sell them. Go through that process of selling them. Work hard to pay off your debts. Don't be so shit. And stop trying to take advantage of people. I think you're right. Right at the start, you said that his colleagues thought he was lazy. Yeah. And I think 100% is. Just do what everyone else does.
Work.
Sort out your shit, mate. I don't understand how they've both gone on to have relatively normal lives. Like, pay back the insurance
They have
money.
had to do that. So I can...
Go and live on the village green. Have they?
So what they did was it says here, this is just from Wikipedia. So it says on the 14th of February 2012, the CPS announced that the entire... This is where the figures are weird, right? But that makes sense if you listen to what I say. £501,641,000 and 39 pence in life insurance and pension payouts, they'd also been getting that, received by Anne Darwin, had been recovered, partly from the sale of 2 properties in Panama. Kingsley Highland, head of the Northeast CPS Complex Casework Unit, said, it is important that fraudsters see that not only will we prosecute them wherever possible, but we also make every effort to retrieve their ill-gotten gains to return them to those they have defrauded. But then it says in April 2014, it was reported that John Darwin had repaid just £121 from the £679,073 that the judge had ordered him to repay. However, this was all because all the assets were in Anne Darwin's name. By July 2015, the pair no longer had any assets, having repaid the total of $541. So I don't know what he had to do.
She's not a victim.
No. Just going back on the whole question about the coroner. So I was just looking up what the law is in the UK around the presumption of death for a person who's missing.
Yeah.
And according to pennytelford.co.uk, which I'm assuming is a solicitor's firm, they are saying at the time there was no single framework for obtaining a declaration that a missing person was to be presumed dead, and therefore applied to the Home Secretary for an inquest into John's death, and more than a year after he had disappeared, a maritime death certificate was issued by the Hartlepool coroner, which enabled Anne to cash in on the insurance policies. So she actually had to apply for that. So it wasn't just immediately declared.
Right.
She had to apply for it in order to get her hands on the cash.
And that's why it did take a year, because I remember when I was reading it out and I went, what year was it? And it was a year, right?
Yeah, because it was 2002 and then 2003 she got the money. So it was a year later.
Yeah.
And because she asked for an inquest into the death, because otherwise I think it's that sort of 7-year period.
Oh, wow.
If they haven't shown up, generally the presumption of death is usually not actually declared until about 7 years after someone's gone
makes
missing.
more sense.
Yeah.
They already had another life chapter.
She's not a victim.
No, not at all.
Well, they were close though. They had 2 more years. And
I hate
that's
that
true.
I hate that she's playing a victim card. She's the one who benefited more so than he did.
No.
They're just idiots.
I think they both benefited. I don't know.
She didn't. He didn't. He had to hide. He didn't do a very good job of it.
Yeah, but the way Swanny talks about
living
him,
a normal life.
Yeah, but he's a narcissist, right? And he's repulsive. He thinks nothing of going off to Kansas and wanting to have an affair with someone else. Like, there are things about that story that are red flags to me.
I'm not saying he's not bad.
No, but I'm saying I could imagine.
What I'm saying is she's equally bad.
Well, I could imagine that being married to a man like that for a very long time, you may actually just go along and be complicit with the stupid shit that he does because it's an easier way of dealing with it. So I'm not saying...
Or she's happy with that too.
Maybe, but I'm not saying she's definitely not a victim.
She's done what she's done to the sons.
Yeah.
She's evil too.
Oh, I think, I think they're both bad. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
They're both
I don't
bad.
think that she can sit there and say...
They're both bad.
I'm the victim. Yeah,
that's what Mercy said. I feel sorry for Mercy.
I don't.
She's the victim.
I don't feel sorry for anybody.
Both to wash dishes till they've paid off all that money. Like, I think just something really simple like that.
Where's the
okay.
quotes from her?
What about wash dishes?
Do some work.
Washing dishes in I don't know, what's the worst hospitality place ever? That the dishes are really gross and there's thousands of them and they've got to get through them.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
They're just like a whole street of restaurants and everyone just takes their dirty dishes down to their house to get clean.
Yeah, okay. And their laundry. Yeah.
Hold the press. I didn't see this article before. I'm going to have to interrupt. It's an exclusive and it's from 24th of May this year, Daily Mail. Headline reads, exclusive, Canoe conman John Darwin is serenaded by his Filipino wife in video she posted online from their Manila home as she pursues bid to become social media influencer. Yes, that was the headline.
That's a very long headline.
Oh, no.
What's she up to?
That is a very long headline.
His new wife describes
It's
herself
all
as a
online,
digital
they can
creator
do it.
in her profile, and the videos in which increasingly uses Darwin as her co-star are receiving dozens of likes. On one vlog shows denim hot pants clad Mercy, 49, serenading father of two, John, 72, and dancing around him.
So either public humiliation by having a camp in the village green or Swanny's got him, just everyone
Public
knows who they are,
bankruptcy,
and public bankruptcy. And Clarkie goes one further with some serious dishwashing from all the restaurants in the UK. All right. Well, Swanny, that was a very amusing story, actually, in a roundabout way.
No one had
That
to
was a
die.
cracker.
And no one had to die. We like it when no one has to die.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. Well, thank you very much. And
Do we, though?
yeah, we do. Sometimes a palate cleanser's good. As we say every week, miss you already.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao, darlings.
What's new?
Adios.
Buenos Aires. Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.